Following the PGL Antwerp major, a question that's been looming in the air amongst Redditors and forum posters alike is, did s1mple choke in the major? He came in with 45 kills and 52 deaths with a .89 rating after the final against Faze concluded, in which Navi lost 0-2 to Faze Clan. This has been a pretty common trend throughout s1mple's career, where he'll make it to the grand finals of a major and either underperform or just fall a little bit short, with the exception of the Stockholm major where he performed pretty well. I guess a lot of people are wondering, was Stockholm just an outlier and is this coming back?
s1mple definitely did choke. Stockholm, going into Stockholm, not Navi were definitely the clear #1 team in the world. And even though he definitely choked in other finals, like the Cologne final, and then in against Astralis at the Face It major, but those were two teams he had no shot at beating, and it was good that he even dragged his team there. But this time it was a real 50-50, just like the Stockholm. With Stockholm, they were probably more of a 75 or 65-35 to win that. Here it was a real 50-50, and he is pretty much the main reason they lost besides Boombich's poor performance. But
For
if you remember earlier in the quarterfinals, he also, if Electronic did not go crazy, they also would have lost to Heroic.
So on Inferno, with the final scoreline of 16 to yeah, okay. So on Inferno, with it going into overtime and Navi ultimately losing 16 to 19, s1mple ended with 28 kills and 30 deaths and a 1.04 rating. So that's a decent rating, but especially when we're looking at s1mple as someone who people consider possibly the GOAT. It's definitely a little bit of a underperformance, I guess you could say, for a
Yeah,
major final.
but at the same time, I think it's a heavy underperformance because star players are supposed to play like star players, right? It's not, even though a 0.88 isn't the worst rating that any like player has had in the major. When you're the star player of your team, you're expected to be posting huge games and huge moments. And honestly, even though he had a .88, I don't even really remember any specific crazy plays he did that kept his team in a round they shouldn't have won.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird balance too, because it's like, okay, it was just one series, like even one map that skewed the rating, but it's at the end of the day too, it's the major final. It's not just some random BO3.
Yeah, and you're an opper, you get Inferno and Nuke. You gotta perform somehow. As like they knew Rain was destroying them outside all game. They should have they This is mainly on Boomich. They failed to adapt, but s1mple, there comes a point where you just gotta take control and do what you need to do to get your team over the line.
And looking at his stat line from Nuke, he ended with 17 kills and 22 deaths with a .73 rating, and that is definitely a pretty marginal underperformance for your star player.
Yeah, he continues to fall a little short in the major finals. It's really hard to say why, but I think a lot of it has to do with his momentum going into the final. Like here, they barely made it through. It was two best. I think both of the series went to three maps against Ents and Heroic. So I don't know if it, even though Navi didn't look as strong as they could have, it was definitely evident that they weren't their top form they were a few months ago at the Stockholm major.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of factors to take in, which I'm sure most people are accounting for, like the whole situation going on with Ukraine and Russia. And I guess that also leads to the question of, where do s1mple and Navi go from here? Because it's pretty safe to assume s1mple and Bit will be remaining on the team, but there's definitely a lot of question in the air around Electronic, Perfecto, and Boomich, as they're all Russian players.
I think the big question mark is definitely going to be answered by Yakindar, and then I don't know about the other two. But to be honest, from what I've heard, I've only heard people talk about. I don't really know if people just don't mention the other two or what exactly is going on there. But
Yeah, I guess Electronic has had also a pretty long career compared to Perfecto and Boomich, so maybe he'll think this might just be time to wrap it up for him.
how s1mple performs at the next blast is really going to show how telling it is. I think he'll play great like he always does. And it was probably just a one-off series, but it's a shame it consistently happens in the major finals.
Yeah, I agree. I do think it was just a one-off performance, and I would ultimately say he did underperform. But I definitely think, if anything, this just motivate him to come back even harder and move on and continue to perform at that GOAT level. Most people expect him to.